Hello and welcome to UK Column Live. It's another information-packed show on today, the 7th of December. And outside, what is the weather doing, Brian?
Well, it's dry, sunny and cold and probably a bit unpredictable, but quite a nice day altogether.
Brilliant, brilliant. Where are we going to first?
Well, one of the things that we've noticed is the amount of what we call non-articles which are appearing in the mainstream press, and we're going to be talking a little bit during today's programme about what's really going on, the propaganda, the attempts at controlling how we think and what we believe and how we behave. So the first shot here, which we'll just bring up on screen, this is just a selection of articles from the Daily Express. I decided to choose the Express. I could have chosen one of the other mainstream papers. But very quickly, if I just pick out a few, if the print's a bit small for viewers, we've got Demi Moore parties late into the night, Dustin Hoffman watching career highlights, Danny DeVito working on saving his marriage, Bert Newton released from hospital, Diane Keaton remembers mother during gala, Stars pay tribute to Dave Brubeck, Johnny Depp to release sequel, and on it goes. If we just scroll it up a bit, Jazz King, James Bond film, Anne Hathaway. So essentially what we're seeing is the whole of our mainstream press filling up with what are clearly junk articles which distract people. They take their attention away from what's really happening. And it's not just the Express that's doing this. It's right the way all across. It's right the way across all of the mainstream papers. And what UK Column Live would like to say is this is the material which is designed to mess up the way we think, and to put a smokescreen over what's really happening. So we hope by flagging up some of the rubbish, we can help people see through that smoke as to what's really happening. But if we just stay on the theme of this sort of stuff, this is the director from the Royal Shakespeare Company. She's getting hot under the collar because she says that the Royal Shakespeare Company should be employing more women, even though most of the plays only require a few women because that's the historical content. She says there's got to be more women, and then she's pointing out that in the future European legislation will dictate that there has to be an equal number of men and women in the Royal Shakespeare Company. So what we just want to say is it doesn't seem common sense to us, but this has been made into a big story, and it's something else to take our minds off what's really happening. But our prize must surely go to the Daily Telegraph for this, which I consider to be a dross story of enormous magnitude. And here is the Telegraph telling us that China has been rocked by 5 sex scandals in 6 days. I'm not quite sure what the population of China is at the moment, but I believe it's well over 1 billion people. So I would suspect that on an average day in China, there's quite a lot of sex going on and quite a lot of scandal associated with it. So what the point of this is this the Telegraph attempting to say, well, we've got problems with Jimmy Savile in UK, so let's run a completely ludicrous story on China, trying to take people's minds off what the truth is.
I think it's also, in a way, it's saying that China's got sex problems, and we'll probably have America's got sex problems or France got sex problems. It's almost saying that it's okay because the rest of the world is having these sort of sex scandals within sort of officers and ranking sort of politicians.
Well, this Chinese gentleman is a sort of chief of police, and apparently he was keeping 2 sisters as mistresses. So it's a pretty mucky little affair. But is this national news for Britain? I mean, this has got to be dross reporting. And Mike picked up on another Telegraph article to do with pussycats.
Yeah, but this is the Belfast Telegraph.
Not that's right, Belfast Telegraph.
So this article says that a cat parasite can infect the human brain and may cause suicidal thoughts and risk-taking. A foodborne parasite that infects domestic cats can get inside the human brain by commandeering special cells of the immune system, which it uses as a Trojan horse to enter the central nervous system. And basically they're trying to suggest that suicidal tendencies may be caused through a parasite rather than the activities of parasites like common purpose?
Yeah, this is very interesting. This is where we have to say it's important to look at the stories and what's really behind them. But smokescreen going on here. We know that across the country now, more and more people are beginning to wake up to the dangers of these applied behavioural psychology, which the government is pumping into schools, school children, colleges through common purpose. This is real, it's factual. We know that Francis Maude and the Tory Cabinet Office have been running this applied behavioural psychology. And of course, we know from talking to the experts themselves that wrongly applied, this type of behavioural psychology can result in people committing suicide. And certainly at the moment there's some excellent work being done by people in Wales, South Wales in particular, who are now really starting to ask questions about the organisation, charities and quangos that have been using these sort of techniques, NLP for example, on children and young people. And what are we seeing? An absolutely massive increase in the suicide rate. It's being used in police training, massive increase in police suicides. And I think you were saying a little while ago, Mike, that the suicide rate in Northern Ireland has also dramatically increased.
Well, certain parts of Belfast, particularly the west of the city, have a suicide cluster just like South Wales. I think Aberdeen's another one. But somebody in the chat box is saying nothing wrong with NLP, but it's being used to manipulate, and maybe that's worth a comment.
Well, I think essentially we would support the comment that's just come in from one of the viewers. It's exactly the same with hypnosis. Ordinary hypnosis can be used to a good effect, or we might have a hypnotist saying to a lady, take your clothes off. So, but what we do know is that these very, very powerful techniques are now being used for what are not only political purposes, but in order to get inside the minds of children and young people. So yes, we would agree, it depends how this stuff is used, but very serious things are happening, and we need to be able to expose and take the lid off just who in the government is attacking the minds of not only young people but the wider general public. We'll be running more programmes looking at this aspect in more detail.
And also, given the article itself, I mean, for how many years have we been keeping cats as pets? Surely, we
thousands of years, I think.
We can't be all of a sudden making a tenuous link towards, the rise in suicides to do with parasites coming from cats, just simply because we've had cats for a long time. Are we suggesting that people in Belfast have all of a sudden started keeping cats that they haven't kept for a long time? I think that's just...
Well, I don't know, but what we can say is that we know that Belfast and Northern Ireland are riddled with common purpose, to the extent that we have local people in Northern Ireland actually saying they now believe the whole of Northern Ireland is controlled through a common purpose agenda. So, yeah. And you've found a bit more of this with the Mail.
I have, yeah. I think it's an interesting article. At first, I wrote it off, but then when I got into it, I thought it was quite interesting with the terminology it's using. The article is talking about gossip in the office place, and it's saying that it's a good thing. It says it encourages people to isolate other workers, which is a good thing because obviously you get shirkers, and it's good to isolate those people. I'd rather say it was good to encourage them, include them, and get them to be motivated. But the article is saying that no, it's a good thing to basically isolate them. It also says that gossip allows people to gather information and to enjoy themselves. Well, I'd say that if that's your source of enjoyment by gossiping about other people, then maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. But what I thought was most interesting is it helps us to be sociably agreeable. Well, I mean, if that's not some sort
of... being a gossip.
Yeah, Orwellian term, I'm not sure I want to be sociably agreeable. I just want to, be able to make my opinions be heard and to sort of, carve out my own existence.
Yeah.
Sociably agreeable just makes me think, just fit in, don't rock the boat, don't do this, just fit in. And I personally think that gossip, it is a natural human function for sure, but too much gossip, I think, creates division. And I think that's really what this article is about, because it's saying gossip is good when, of course, our grandparents and our parents taught us that gossip isn't good and it isn't
Well,
publicly good.
I think this is deliberate. I think this is an article to mess around with your mind, and what it's designed to do is to create division in the workplace. And we had over the last couple of days the business that we've now got to the situation where it's being suggested that nursing staff, doctors and nursing staff in NHS hospitals should be taught that they need to be compassionate and caring to patients. Now, this is madness because people's natural state is to be caring and to look after people. So what's really gone on, of course, is that the mindset of many people working in these organisations has been interfered with. And here is the Mail, I think, doing it again deliberately.
Yeah. I think the thing you bring up about the NHS is a really good point, because it does two things. Firstly, it tells people that the way that you care for is wrong because we have to now tell you how to care. And
yeah, that's true.
Secondly, that's more of a subconscious thing, but secondly, I think more directly, it tells us that the state wants us to care the way they want us to care, which is probably an administration, more drugs and more treatments, I'd imagine.
I think that's a very good point, because we could move on to how the state would like to tell us how to care even more, because here we have chief Eurocrat, he's described here, Herman van Rompuy, from Brussels, who is now absolutely pressing for the European Union to get more powers, and in particular to take control of coordination, convergence and enforcement of economic policies. So we've got Europe absolutely falling into the to the pit, unemployment, the euro wrecked, countries destroyed, economies destroyed, no jobs, and here is this man standing up and actually pressing more and more integration. It says here that national parliaments were not in the best position to take the interests of the Eurozone into account. So here is this man wanting more power. An official who helped draw up the report said the top priority is to complete the banking union. So never mind, let's get rid of the fraud in the international banking cartels. No, let's give them more power. And then there was a one-liner here which said nearly two-thirds of Britain want the UK, two-thirds of Britons want the UK to quit the European Union. This is some new online survey. I find this fascinating because we got this constant drive around 50-60%. But when we talk to people in the streets and the people that contact the UK column, it's obvious that the feeling now against the shambles that the European Union is a lot stronger than that. But we'll wait and see. You felt quite passionate about this story to do with the mother who tried to say what was best for her son, Sally Roberts.
I do, and I'm not going to go into as much as I did yesterday, because I think I said enough yesterday about the treatment she suffered. But what I did want to say was that she's now come out and she's spoken to the press, and basically she said that she wanted to treat him with natural methods. She wanted to use oxygen chambers because she felt it was less invasive. And the reason she wanted to do this was she was convinced that her son no longer had the illness because the scans had shown that he was clear, and it also showed that his spinal fluid was clear. So my question was, if the scans are showing that he's clear and the spinal fluid is clear, why is it this all of a sudden this emergency to basically get the people to find her so they could take the child away and give him this radiotherapy? I would suggest, on a personal opinion, I think it's not necessarily the concern for the child. It's really to send out this message that if we feel that you are putting your child at risk by not doing the sort of procedures and
that we tell you
to do, then we will make you do it. I think that's really what the article was more about. I just wanted to also mention that one of the things that actually made her concerned was that her doctor described the treatment to her that they would be giving her son as frying his brain. And you can understand, if to any parents out there, if you're told that the treatment is going to fry your son's brain, then naturally you're going to react the way that she did. And that's really what I wanted to say.
But a serious undertone that, again, we've got the state absolutely dictating what we can do. And this business now that that children are not the responsibility of their parents. The first line of care and decision for a child is not the parents, it's now the state. And if we have an actual look at Parliament and we look at the people we've got in Parliament, we've got perverts, we've got liars, we've got criminals, we've got people who are all of those things, and yet these are the people at the moment that are pushing themselves forward to decide they know what best with our children. Yeah. It's time for us to say no.
Very harrowing, yes.
And you're a bit hot under the collar about banks as well.
Yes. Well, I added this in because really of the story we had yesterday with Mr. Watkin Richards, simply because he was a man that was missold a product through Barclays Bank, and of course banks have now come under pressure again today in the Mail. There's a story about big banks that are still basically pressurising their staff to missell needless and expensive products to customers. Basically a survey of 500 staff was conducted by a consumer watchdog, and the staff confirmed that basically they were forced to make a hard sell, and that the culture is still persisting. And I'm sure that really we're not seeing any change. We're seeing lots of talk in the media, we're seeing lots of talk from our politicians, but of course our politicians are really the servants of the banks, and they're never going to force that change because simply put, as I said, they're the servants, and these bankers, they're going to carry on ruining people's lives. They're going to carry on forcing money out of their pockets because that's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid.
Perhaps we could also say that, of course, the best hard sell by the banks is to sell to us the ludicrous idea that they can create money out of nothing, which is then passed through the government at interest. Yeah. So the nation is enslaved in debt. If you haven't seen it, have a look on the UK Column site and look for our brochure for the Bradbury Pound, where we show and provide the evidence for the fact that the system we have at the moment is not necessary, and previously there has been a perfectly good system of the government issuing its own money without the debt burden. Yeah. So do look into that.
Oh, also as well, actually something I noticed on Mike's desk today was a really interesting cartoon, and it said at the bottom, it said, how can the lender bail out the how can the borrower bail out the lender? And it's a really good point. How can if I lend money to Brian, how can he then bail me out if I'm broke?
Well, if you're printing money out of nothing in the first place, you can hand it around like Monopoly. But the key thing is that Chancellor George Osborne is essentially lying to the British public because he will not tell the truth about how money is being provided not only for the nation but into the economy. So if we can expose the lies from David Cameron and Chancellor George Osborne, we're getting well on our way to dealing with it. Mike, you're hovering? No? Okay. Well, moving on, of course, one of the things that we believe the general public in UK should absolutely stick with is that the police do a full and proper investigation into the BBC and Jimmy Savile sex abuse scandal, and that the guilty people are tried and punished. So the Mirror picking up on the fact that the police have arrested another man in his 60s from Surrey on suspicion of sexual offences. A spokesman said officers working on Operation U-Tree have this morning, Thursday, 6th of December, in fact, arrested a man in his 60s in connection with the investigation. The individual falls under the strand of the investigation we have termed Others, and the force is leading the national probe into claims made against the disgraced TV presenter. Of course, there's a wall of silence at the moment from the BBC. No reporting at all on anything to do with the corporation. They're just simply handing out money to their directors as they fall by the wayside. Another article from the Mail, and this is about the PR guru Max Clifford, who was arrested yesterday on suspicion of sexual offences by police investigating Jimmy Savile abuse scandal. He's been questioned all day, and the police also searched his £3 million mansion in Surrey. Now, this is a very serious thing. Several people have written on and texted into us to say, is this the police actually lifting all of his information in order to cover up and protect people at the top of society. Well, that's a pretty cynical viewpoint. We're going to say we hope actually that this is the first time the police are really going to grip the issue. We're going to introduce a little bit of humour here because somebody pointed it out to us, but I don't know whether you noticed the little dog sitting there in the picture. It was pointed out that this was probably an undercover UK column reporter. So we're not undermining the seriousness of the topic. A little bit of humour from one of our viewers.
Can I just say as well, I think actually this whole sex scandal thing is vitally important to the alternative community, but I think also as people as well. Yeah. Simply because if we can get the lid off this, if we can put so much pressure on politicians and media to get the lid off this, the rest will come undone. That's a personal opinion,
because the fraud and
really
corruption is the glue that's holding this wicked regime together.
Exactly. So all of the stuff, the banking, the secret societies, all of this stuff will come undone because the public, the general public, will forgive everything and anything. They will forgive the fraud, they'll forgive the fiddling of expenses, but they will not forgive paedophilia. They will not. And if we can get the lid off this, I really think that we've got a good chance of exposing this.
Well, we've even got people suggesting to us, and we're not saying it's correct or not, but we've got people suggesting that in fact the whole point of the Leveson inquiry and the government's desperation to take control of the press and media is in order that they can absolutely control what information comes out about these paedophile rings. Yep. And the key fact is that major figures in these paedophile rings are at the top of the establishment. We're talking politicians, we're talking judges, we're talking senior police officers. So this is not a celebrity problem, and that's, to my mind, where they're trying to take this issue at the moment.
Yeah,
okay. Well, we briefly put up there Rebecca Brooks, so a Guardian article here saying that Andy Coulson and Rebecca Brooks are to appear at the Old Bailey. And it's quite interesting. They're appearing alongside News of the World Royal correspondent Clive Goodman, the veteran Sun journalist John Kay, a Ministry of Defence official who's not named. Why that should be the case, I don't know, because presumably there's no official secrets involved. Well, unless that is the lady Jordan Barber, Bettina Jordan Barber. But this is the interesting thing, that part of the charge, Brooks, Kay and Jordan Barber face charges of conspiracy to pay approximately $100,000 for information that formed the basis of several news stories. Now, I've got to say, please tell me if I've got this wrong, but we're taking people to court over conspiracy to pay. Now, for me, for this to be an offence, the offence is the other side of the wall, isn't it? That the people who are actually providing the material are committing the offence, because the material that they are hoping to get this money for must be material they shouldn't be releasing. Yeah. There's something not right here, but of course these people are appearing in court. There is not a sign of a single politician yet appearing. And of course, David Cameron has deliberately misled the public by withholding emails from Leveson in the first place. So much as we know there was a lot of dirt went on here, it does seem that Rebecca Brooks and her colleagues have been targeted to be the fall guys, while the rest of the political establishment hides in the shadows. But part of the point we wanted to make here is, of course, it's the Guardian reporting this with great glee. This is part of the Guardian Media Group's website, and we've just highlighted for viewers that at the top, of course, it mentions their creators, their guardians, the Scott Trust, and we just like to remind people that the Scott Trust has been funding the Media Standards Trust that's been driving the Hacked Off group. And this is the whole of the mechanism calling for the Leveson-style inquiry in the first place. So if we analyse it, our question is, should the Guardian be charged with fraud for deceiving the public in creating its own news? Maybe that's a bit strong, but certainly the Guardian is being incredibly deceitful at the moment with its activities in driving Leveson, but not and not declaring it in its own news stories. And I think, Mike, you've were interested in this headline over Leveson report proposing something.
A couple of things about this. The article saying that David Cameron is considering establishing a new press watchdog by royal charter. So what that would mean is that basically the watchdog would be established. It would have certain terms of reference and certain articles of incorporation, let's say, if we want to call them that. And those could not be changed without the approval of the Privy Council, the Queen and Council. The Privy Council website says basically that there are now over 900 chartered bodies. A royal charter is a way of incorporating a body. It turns it from a collection of individuals into a single legal entity. I mean, there's other ways to incorporate companies, as we know. But basically, they're saying that the only way that anything can be changed, so they're saying that the newspapers would not be able to change the way that this body would operate unilaterally. The only way that any changes could be made to this organisation would be to go back to the Privy Council. So it basically puts it right into the scope of the Privy Council. But the other thing that was interesting about that headline, and the headline in particular, is PM proposes third way to regulate the press, and I believe that what we're being told is that this will be, the press will be regulated via big society, because the third way is the big society.
Well, of course, if you're creating a dictatorship called big society, and that's what it is, dictatorship, the government needs to be in total control of the media. So it's almost as though, what is it, they've got so arrogant that they're now just blasting this information out. They think we're too stupid to see what's actually going on.
No, I come back to this thing. Our silence is taken that we agree. They tell us what they're doing. They give us the opportunity to object to it. When we sit dumb and stupid in the corner and pretend that we don't know what's going on, then they assume that we agree with what they're doing. So they tell us what they're doing in order to see that we agree with it, and our silence is taken to be agreement. So
right.
Until we get that message through our heads that we've got to stop sitting silent, they're going to continue to assume agreement.
Right. Well, sorry, were you going to come in?
No, I just agree completely. I agree completely.
We know from a lot of the texts and calls and emails that we're getting that people are saying to us, please start putting out material about what's to be done, and we are absolutely with viewers and listeners on this, and we are going to be starting to focus not only what can be done, but what is being done around the country, which is producing successful results. So your point's taken there, Mike.
I think that's a really good point as well, that there is so much going on now that is positive, that the mainstream media is trying desperately to make a negative spin on the economy, on the country as a whole, and the fact that we're crumbling apart. But there is a lot going on. There really is. And I think that we do have to remain positive, and we have to, and so do all the viewers at home. Every single one of us now has to find ways, just as Mike's saying, to make our opinions heard by those that matter, and to form groups and to bind together, because the unity of this country, which we did experience in the war, whatever, there's so much to talk about that, but obviously there was unity amongst the people, and that's really what we need right now, and it has to come from everybody. Everybody has to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Well, this is a very interesting story. I think the message is very simple. It's Christopher Weatherhead, 22, who used the name Nerdo on the internet, was described as a leading player in the distributed denial of service attacks. And so he's just appeared in court on account of conspiracy to impair the operation of computers, contrary to the Criminal Law Act 1977, because he's been carrying out cyber attacks. This is connection with WikiLeaks, etc. And PayPal. I just wanted to bring up this story because isn't it remarkable that we've got GCHQ in this country swallowing up millions, billions of pounds. We've got the latest technology. We've got MI5 recruiting more and more people. We can't deal with internet pornography. We can't deal with massive paedophile rings operating over the internet in this country. But here we've got effectively a schoolboy who can do some fairly clever things, and in no time at all he's identified and picked up. And what it says to me is that at the moment, Cameron and the Miliband brothers and Clegg, all of the UK's political parties are absolutely in the conspiracy to keep this mess of pornography over the internet, to keep the paedophile rings active, because this is how they can actually control the country. If they wanted to, at the flick of a switch, they could be picking these people up. So we can't congratulate young Christopher on what he's done, but I can't help feeling that perhaps there's another scapegoat here for the situation at the moment. Mike, over to you. Cookbooks. Sorry, did I catch you on the caught you on the hop there?
Owen Patterson believes that we need to be worrying about how we cook our scraps. Now, let's just say I object to throwing out good food, right? Yeah. But the headline here again is how we use up scraps, and it's kind of patronising, but it's also sending a message, I believe. And if you show the next slide, I'll just come back to this point. Bread prices, wheat prices, the commodities on the futures markets, the prices are going through the roof. We are going to see some significant food price inflation. My wife came home the other day and said, "Do you know how much I had to pay for a packet of peas?" And it's really starting to hurt people now. And when Owen Patterson gets up and says, really we need to start training people how to cook their scraps, I think there's something behind that.
Well, what also gets me is the sheer arrogance of his comment, and the fact that the same old tired faces are used, Jamie Oliver and Nigella Lawson, who, they fill the papers, they fill the BBC. So this dictatorship, isn't it? It's incredible.
Will Mr. Patterson's wife have to, cook with scraps? Will Mr. Osborne or Mr. Cameron's wife have to cook with scraps?
Well, leftover caviar has to be used up fairly quickly because
it does go off. You're right.
It does go off quickly.
Yeah, you're right.
And what about the banks here? Fairly spectacular picture from the Telegraph over the city.
Well, this is some whinging going on that the regulations around banking, the proposed regulations are going to make UK banks uninvestable. The government's mission to create a safe financial system is unrealistic, according to these whingers, and is making banks uninvestable. This is a group of Britain's biggest investors. They're saying it's based on a report from the Association of British Insurers, and the Telegraph says it's a stark warning. Personally, my view is that it's the bankruptcy and the amount of debt that our banks are carrying that makes them uninvestable. Perhaps, really we should be looking at how we deal with that by putting them into administration, by splitting them up along Glass-Steagall lines. These are the kinds of things that we should be doing, and not worrying about whether a few fat cats find our banks investable or not.
Yeah. Malcolm, over to you.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting story. A High Court judge has accused of jumping a red light, and he's tried to have the case thrown out because he thinks it's unfair and oppressive. I'm not sure whether to congratulate him or whether to say, isn't that a little bit hypocritical? Because I wonder if he's sat on any cases where he's, I suppose he wouldn't as a High Court judge, but anyway, he's basically, as I say, been accused of jumping a red light. And he has tried to argue originally that the Home Office, the equipment wasn't Home Office approved, but that he later then dropped that argument, and now he's moved into saying that it's unfair and oppressive because the prosecution has basically not been very helpful and not been very cooperative.
Yeah. Is he a closet-free man?
Perhaps he is. I don't know. I don't know.
But it does say something that here we have judges. We have witnessed ourselves judges running courts as if they're their own private place of business. This is the quality of the people who are supposedly metering out judgment on other people. And of course, this is a perversion of law in this country because the judgment should be made by a jury of our peers. And presumably this is why Ken Clarke MP in particular is desperate to get rid of juries inside courts. He wants more of his corrupt cronies to be running these star chambers. So if we could bring the country back to applied common law, where decisions on crimes and those accused are made by a jury of our peer, we would be in a better position, I think. These are career judges, of course, which is the very system that the European Union wants.
Yeah.
And the Russians have been picking up on a bit of this.
I don't know. This isn't my story.
Okay.
Well, this is, well, it's a bit ironic, I thought, but what the guy says is absolutely right. I do think it's a bit ironic that Russia is criticizing anybody on human rights records, you know, but anyway, that's by the by. He's basically saying that the European Union is treating people pretty badly. He said we think it's time our European partners change the situation and guarantee the observance of their international obligations. The non-observance of the rights of minorities and prisoners, inadequate protection of children's rights, and the abuse of power in dispersing street demonstrations. And I think it's particularly the abuse of power in dispersing street demonstrations that he was highlighting. But on the other hand, you know, Russia is throwing people into gulags in Siberia for protesting inside churches and so on. So, you know, it works both ways. Everything he says, I think, is correct, but I do think for Russia to say this about anybody else, really, they should be looking at themselves first.
Of course, but we should be looking at ourselves first as well to get these problems sorted out. And we're ending on this fine lady, so I don't know who wants to claim Hillary.
Well, I don't particularly would like to claim Hillary, but I'd certainly like to...
We must apologise. I see that there's been an IT glitch, and we seem to have a new name for it.
There must be similar
Harry
IT
Clinton.
glitch that Syria's fraud squad are experiencing at the moment. Maybe letters are going missing. Sorry. Okay, so basically, she's come out and said that Assad has loaded deadly nerve gas into aerial bombs and is prepared to use them against his own people. This is a claim from the US intelligence. And I just say that this is very definitive, that he certainly, saying that he certainly has it. What I think is interesting is they've also said that the Syrian forces will have to use these bombs within 60 days until the chemical mixture expires. I think that's interesting because it almost gives a time limit on when America could invade, because obviously you would imagine that if, let's say, for example, you do have a 60-day expiry limit and he is prepared to use them on his own people, well then when we get to day 58 or 57, everyone's going to be very nervous because you're kind of thinking, well, I spent all this money on these bombs, I kind of have to use them. So it might give a perfect excuse to go in there. It's also very interesting because I had passed me today that on Thursday the rebels seized control of a small southwestern Syrian town called El Safira, and that's just 3 kilometres from the Syrian army's largest chemical weapons store. Now I think that's interesting for a number of reasons, but it could be that the rebels could, if they're so worried about the gas being used, take out those bases, but I seriously doubt that that's going to happen. And it also could be that they're protecting those chemical bases. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, unfortunately.
Mike?
No, well, she is in Belfast today, so anybody over in Belfast might want to go and visit City Hall. And,
Well, presumably she should be addressing common purpose. I just wanted to say I think it's incredibly scary is the right word, to see Hillary Clinton stood in front of the NATO flag. Who is this woman to be speaking on these policies and dictating what's actually happening with these other countries overseas? What gives her the right or the power to do this? Of course, she doesn't have it. It's only just the publicity that's given to her. But on the subject of Syria, I think this ramping up of the chemical weapon scare is the exact tactics that were carried out with Iraq. So this is absolute propaganda by the British government and the Americans. One of the key things is that if you talk to military forces about the use of chemical and biological weapons, the things are a nightmare to use because of unpredictability about where they end up. And the consensus amongst military people is that these things, in a way, are more trouble than they're worth, because how do you control them? In my opinion, is Assad lining up to use these things on his own people? Absolutely not. This is a scam in order to ramp up the world opinion
Yeah.
to allow Britain and America presumably to get more troops into Syria.
And of course, there are quite a number of videos now on, around the internet showing the supposed conflicts between the Syrian army and the rebels, and it does appear from these videos, of course the authenticity can't be 100% verified, but it does appear that the soldiers are protecting the people from what does appear to be quite clearly a international invasion using the use of mercenaries.
Okay, well, more on all of that in due course. We'd like to thank everybody who's joined us this week for UK Column Live. We'll, of course, be online coming Monday, so I hope you'll join us then at 12 o'clock. Thank you for all of the very positive emails and comments that we've had in, and we've been very, very pleased that so many of you liked the interview which Malcolm did yesterday with the Welsh farmer Watkin Richards, and of course his amazing exposure of £1.5 billion worth of fraud within the MAF and DEFRA farming system in UK. So we want to stop what's going on. Let's get the truth out. Let's get the criminal activities exposed, and let's bring our politicians to book. If you like what we're doing, and you can, please subscribe to the UK Column, because to get people out on the streets, to travel, to get the reports in, it all costs. So if you can donate, please do. Thanks for joining us.
Just before we go, I understand you're on Liberty Tactics tonight?
Liberty Tactics, yes, I think starting at 6. So Justin Walker as well is coming on. He'll be talking about the Bradbury Pound, and of course that understanding of the Bradbury Pound is a major part of understanding how we can overturn this farcical monetary fraud that George Osborne is imposing on the nation. And I'll be talking about wider issues of what's going on in the country, and also how we can stop it. So that's Liberty Tactics. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.